Witchy and Weird podcast. Hi, Witchy and Weird. I am joined by Jessie Susannah Karnatz, aka the Money Witch, who brings capitalism-critical, shame-free education to healers, hustlers, and creatives in order to catalyze their change in their financial lives. She believes healing our finances will bring blessings to our lives, our lineages, and our communities. She offers education, money magic projects, intuitive financial coaching, and tax preparation online and in the Bay Area on unceded Ohlone land, and does it all with impeccable business lady style. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have you here. I don't know if you get this a lot, but I feel like you're like a celebrity in the witch community.
Oh my God. No, I don't think anyone ever said that. I mean, sometimes people are like, you're famous. And I'm like, I'm really not. I'm like micro famous. But no.
Yeah, so I'm excited to have you on here. I know you have like a book coming out soon, so we get to talk about that and your process. And I think your book covers a lot of the questions I wanted to ask anyways. So
Cool.
I guess like my first question for you would be like how your journey to like getting to claiming the title of Money Witch.
Yeah, I think that I guess it kind of chose me. I mean, really, okay, so in 2012, and I go into this a little bit in the book, right? Kind of like what's the Money Witch origin story. But in 2012, I was just like having a real, tower death year. And I was we were getting evicted from like a big communal house that we had lived in for a long time. My kid was 2, I was married, and I decided I wanted to get divorced, and it was just very chaotic. But also had not been really like working outside of being a parent for about 3 years, and I have a really like eclectic labor toolbox, but it's like you gotta just and a bit of a like entrepreneurial brain. So I just was sort of like, okay, what am I gonna do? And I tried a bunch of different things. Like I was like, oh, I'll go back to dancing, and it was very like divinely guided. Like it's like I like twisted my ankle before I could even get on stage to audition. I was like selling like joints and margaritas in the park with my sister for a few months, and that was a great, like, actually we were doing great, but we got like really weirdly arrested. And then I started 2 businesses. I like applied for a position at an organization that I liked. It was like I tried all these things, and then I was like, okay, I'll start a business. And I started 2 businesses at the same time, actually. And one of them was a postpartum doula practice. And one of them was Money Witch, which builds off of, things I do have history doing and did have some skill set doing. And I actually like, there was like a handful of names. I can't find the email, but I remember it's probably like tucked in my Hotmail somewhere, but I remember like emailing a bunch of friends being like, here's 10 business names, like which one do you like the best? And Money Witch was like on the list, so I feel like sometimes, I mean, I am the Money Witch, I am a Money Witch, and also sometimes when I introduce myself, I say I run a business called Money Witch, because ultimately it's like that's kind of how it started, before it kind of morphed into almost like an avatar. I feel like, I kind of am like, oh, Money Witch is like my avatar in the world. And the money part and the witch part kind of come separate, which I could tell you the story of, but it will take a long time. So, I mean, I'm happy to do it. It's up to you. You guide it.
Yeah, so I'm like really I was looking through your book, and I love that you're really focused on like healing through money. I feel like a lot of the spiritual community it's about like manifesting with money and not addressing like, well, maybe I have some blocks or maybe I have some negative associations. So I'd love to hear more about like your philosophy or like how you came to this, like, I want to help people like heal their money stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I think of what I do. The large part of what I do is financial shadow work.
Mhm.
Um, and I just think, your money is a gateway
Mhm.
into, your shadow, right? Into the inside of you and other things too, your motivations, your desires, and your history. And there's many gateways that you could take, but this is one of them. And I got interested in it because before Money Witch, I had another business. I started forming it in 2008, I think, with a business partner, two business partners. And it was like a financial services
Mhm.
business. It's called Brass Tacks. And um, I started doing bookkeeping for like some nonprofit
Mhm.
orgs a little bit. And I just got really intrigued by how, in that position, you kind of like go to the organization once a month and you're like, okay, well, here's the checklist of stuff that I was like, hey, cool. If you want your finances to like be going great, and this is not even people's personal finances, right? This is like
Mhm.
the finances of the organization, the organism of the organization. And you'd be like, okay, just do these 5 things this month, to keep all the receipts in the folder and do this and this and this.
Mhm.
And then you like go back every month and it's like, did you do those things? No, you know? And I was like, why? Like, why when we know like what we want, and then it's like, oh, well, here's what you do to get there, even when it's pretty bite-sized, a lot of times we just don't do it. So,
Mhm.
and I was like, why? Like, really, why? Because, and that's the issue. Like, that's what's going to help people have better finances, financial lives, is like trying to help them unlock the behavioral blocks, the emotional, spiritual blocks, the ancestral blocks that, because, that are preventing people from implementing the tools that they might already have access to, because it's like, you can there's a million blogs about how to have a budget, how to do your bookkeeping, how to save for an emergency fund, how to whatever. But it's like, we don't even want it. Almost, it like runs off our feathers or something. We're like, oh no, not that. And then we're like, I don't know how to budget. But like,
Mhm.
no, not those like 10,000 blogs about budgeting. Ugh, like, no. So like, why? I don't know. I'm nosy, so probably that's why I'm here.
No, I like that way of looking at it because I think that's a lot easier to just look at like the behaviors you're already having around your money. And then if you're feeling like you said, like some kind of resistance to doing the thing, like just asking why, where does this come from? I feel like I've never heard it more simply put. Um,
Thanks.
so no, that's really awesome because I feel like with the overwhelming confusion that people experience, like having the simplicity of like just ask yourself like why, then you
Well,
can get
because
the answers.
otherwise it just, most people just flip it into shame automatically, right? Like, it's a subconscious conversation for the most part, but it's like, oh, why am I not budgeting? Well, I guess it's because I'm bad with money, I'm a terrible person, I'm irresponsible, I'm lazy, which is just all kind of coded shame words, right? Like, there's something wrong with me. But I'm like, well, or there's something wrong with the tools, the idea, the system that it's set within. And also, yeah, it's always more subtle and intricate like that. Like, shame is never really true, right? Because there's nothing inherently wrong with like who anyone is. So it can't be like, oh, well, why you're not doing your budgeting is because something's like inherently wrong with you. So there has to be like a more sophisticated answer.
Hmm. So when you're asking why, did you start when you started Money Witch, did you like immediately say like this is what I want to help people with, was the why? Or because I know a lot of people when they start their business, they're usually doing it on themselves. Like for me, I did a bunch of inner child healing for myself, and I was like, I need to like bring this to other people. Like, I feel like maybe it sounds like it was a reverse for you because you're working with other businesses and then you're like, no, this is a thing that I'm seeing a pattern in other businesses.
Yeah, the why was the work that I wanted to do. And I did also offer, like when I began Money Witch, I did tax preparation, I did bookkeeping, and then I did what I call intuitive financial coaching. So I've always done that from the beginning. Over time, I dropped the bookkeeping, and then over more time, because I'm still wrapping up some old
Mm.
situations, but I stopped doing taxes. Like this is the first tax season that I'm not doing taxes as a tax preparer. And have just started, being like, okay, I'm just going to exclusively do like the coaching, the teaching, the writing, the thinking, the talking. But yeah, it was that why, like I wanted to help people work through things and not just do the practical part. I think it has been really helpful to also be able to offer the practical part, right? Because a lot of times it's like, okay, yeah, the mindset piece, but then also, it's like you need the actual bookkeeping knowledge or you need the actual tax knowledge also. But I was like, I'm gonna move into doing this healing work. And my website from that time has been healyourfinances.com. And then over the last 2 years, like I finally eventually bought moneywitch.com and am about like literally probably by the time this episode comes out, I'll be over at moneywitch.com with a really beautiful new website I'm very excited about. But that Heal Your Finances has always been the premise.
Nice. So for people who are listening who want to like begin their money healing journey, like what advice would you give to them? Or like, do you have a thing that you're like, okay, start here?
I think, just a little mindfulness, so, and really it's like shadow work or any of that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like self-awareness, right? So, when we're doing meditation or we're doing shadow work or we're doing, dream work or we're doing tarot, astrology, it's really always, ultimately leads to just like this larger, value premise of self-awareness. So I would say just something that is in service of self-awareness, but that could be a very light form of it. And I think a few options that come to mind would be either like just taking a week and saying like, every time I interact with money, so it could be like I pay the bill at a restaurant, I have to talk to my roommates about, the power bill, I'm paying my, student loan bill online, I get paid, I online shop, just notice, like just be like, I'm going to take 1 second and just check in with my body. How do I feel my body? What kind of mindset am I in right now? Like, are there any thoughts or feelings that are coming up? Are there any like voices that pop into my head? And I think even just that noticing, and if you wanted to, you could jot it down in a journal. You could make a note on your phone, something like that. I think just that noticing would bring a lot of information actually. And I love, the reason I said do it for 1 week is, to me, I think with habits, I'm like Aries, I have a lot of Aries. I'm like Aries, Sun, Venus, and Mars. And for me, it's like things that I'm going to have to do daily, like forever. Like I'm just like, oh, I don't want to. So I think it's like surprising how much benefit you can do get out of doing something just for like a limited amount of time. And it makes it feel more manageable, right? Like if you're like, I have to transform my relationship to money, and now I have to think every time I ever spend money, I have to be mindful of it. It's like, actually you don't. Like, what if you just did it for one day? Just see how you feel, check in, like as a starting point.
I like that. So then what would be like next steps? Like I realize like every time I online shop, I spend an hour online shopping, I add all this stuff to my cart. And then I'm like, no, I can't spend that money on myself and and get rid of it. Like you start
Hmm.
to recognize these patterns. Cause I know like in your book, you talk about like how to break this down, how to like tools for healing that. So
Hmm.
yeah, what would you do next?
I mean, I'm going to speak to it two different ways. One, like in that particular situation, it's the why, right? Okay,
Mhm.
why? Because a couple different things could be happening. One, it could just be like, um, I like to add things to my cart. Like it could be a very like self-loving, self-protective energy, right? Of like savings. Like I really do like to online shop, but I don't actually need this stuff and my savings is my priority, or this other, I'm going on this trip as my priority, or whatever it is. Um so I feel like this was a game called online shopping and that was fun, and that's a tool I can use as just like something to have fun and relax. Okay, that could be one thing that's happening. And at that point it's like, oh, well, maybe I have a sort of like curatorial mind and I like to style things, and like maybe I could get into like doing Pinterest, or I
Mm.
could get into like, some like sketching or like cutting things, collaging, or, something like that. And there's no need to shift the behavior, like if nothing's, you know, kind of self-harming about it, right?
Mm.
Another way it could go is like maybe you do that and it is things that you need and you do have the money, but you're like not used to having the money and you're like, oh, I don't deserve these things, or it's feeling really scarce or whatever. And I feel like, under those circumstances, then it's like, okay, honestly, like the slowness, like, let me just notice that I feel like that.
Mm.
Okay, there's a scarcity, there is a feeling of scarcity. There's a feeling of not deserving. A lot of times, like we're saying with the shadow work, wherever you go, there you are, right? So you may at that point be like, oh, yes, scarcity and like lack of self worth. I know those. They come up in therapy all the time, or, whatever it is, right? Like, oh, that came up when I was doing this inner child work, or that came up when I was like, in that astrology reading I got, or something like that, right? Or in when I was like healing from my breakup, and you kind of start weaving it together, like, oh,
Mm.
that stuff's showing up in money too. That's interesting. Let me like note that and just deepen the complexity of my like healing landscape, because healing is just like weaving these little,
Mm.
and magic, right? It's like just in artistry, all those things. It's just collecting threads, right? And weaving them and going on your path. And it's like they will develop and they will unfold into like larger revelations. You don't always have to like push it, right? um the other way, in a kind of generalized, like, okay, building some baseline self-awareness, what would be my next step? My next step would be building what I call financial intimacy.
Mm.
And the phrase together, financial intimacy, I first heard as it's the title of a book by the financial author Jacquette Timmons. And that book is like a really great book about relationships and like intimacy and money, that is like specifically written with the lens of like professional Black women, but is a great read for anyone who wants to kind of like do money better in their relationship. But those words together have started to mean something different to me, which is like about actually like building more intimacy in your relationship with finance, like getting closer to your finances, holding
Mm.
them more tight, like being more intimate with them. And so I feel like once you start to get that awareness, the financial intimacy piece is the next piece. So that means things like checking your bank account regularly, right? Like that on any given day, just like on any given day with someone that you're very intimate with, your partner or your kid, your best friend, your parent, you might be able to say, like, oh, yeah, I know how they're doing today, right? Like pretty much every day, I know how this person's doing. Okay, do you know how your money's doing every day?
Mm.
Like, do you know how much is in your bank account? How much savings do you have? Like, what are the interest rates? Like, how much debt do you have? Like, how much impact did that credit card payment have, and like what does that mean, and how many months is it going to take you to pay it off, and like what your goals are, how much you actually earn, what your take home is, like how much profit you made from your business, how much profit you're making per individual product, like all those pieces of information that, even though we're like navigating these things and often doing it quite geniusly, we might not actually know like a lot of
Yeah.
those things, so just being like, okay, let me actually get to know my money a little bit better.
I love that. Yeah. I know I have like a complicated money story. So like even when you're saying like, do you know how much money's in your bank account? Like check it more than once a month. I was like, ooh, like my body's like,
I
okay,
know.
okay.
I know. Where do you feel it?
I feel like it's like a tightness. It's like
In
the
your
overwhelm.
chest
Yeah,
here?
it's like I
Yeah.
don't want to take any action. It's like I don't want to do this.
Hmm.
I know like it just feels so draining like energetically. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to check all these things and be realistic about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a step of self-awareness. Okay. When I'm feeling that tightness in my chest, what does that mean? It's close to your heart.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like that boundary, like you were saying, right? You had your hands up like this. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, no.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, please push it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about like shame and like, removing like capitalism and stuff. So I love to know more about like how your approach to like removing or even acknowledging like shame in this and like you said, sometimes it's external stuff. It's not our fault, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I think, um, I mean, shame, I don't know if I truly have that much like, here's how you heal shame. It's more just like, hey, let me just note and point out the way that like all these things actually are shame, right? And that shame, as we really know, like ultimately kind of just trying to myth bust shame, right? Like
Mm,
shame is a complete waste of time, is a complete waste of your energy. You were like created, it's a miracle that you were created. There is absolutely no way that something is like uniquely wrong with you. Like it's just like
mm,
it's just not true, right? Like there's nothing about shame that is stands in truth. And um that shame also is, and like you're saying, this is in the book, like shame is like internalized depression, right? So it's like there's, depending on where we're standing in the kind of racial, geographic, like economically imposed caste system that we live in, there's a lot of messaging like, oh well, you don't have resources,
mm,
you don't have whatever kind of resources. Oh, that's because something's just not as good about you.
mm,
And that's the message. So I think um just trying to inhabit the energetic space in your resources, in your money, in that kind of material realm of your life, in a way that says like, no, I have a right to have money. I have a right to have resources. I have a right to be a resourced person with agency. And I am going to feel comfortable with that. And then I'm going to like do what I need to do to engage that relationship in a more loving, like self-loving way.
I like that. I was kind of seeing, so like I'm Jewish, and in Judaism, they teach us to like question everything. Like if we
Mm-hmm.
don't like relate to something in the Torah, like question why, right? And I just
Mm-hmm.
kept seeing like I think like that it's a big first step, like how you're saying, like, maybe it's not about healing the shame, but I think for a lot of people, even just hearing that or like acknowledging that like this is a tactic that you grew up at, living under or accepting as like truth, and like you can just question that. Like I like how you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
pointing out like, I want to take up space in this instead of being told like you don't deserve a space in this or you don't have a space in this, like questioning every like negative thought around money, around like I do deserve space in this. Like what if I did deserve this? What if I could achieve this or have this? I just kept seeing like this, I don't know, this like visualization of like everything that pops up around like external like capitalist money shame stuff. Like what if it wasn't like that for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful because a lot of shame and capitalistic stuff, like it's designed to take away our power. So if we're just inherently like, I'm gonna give myself my power back, like no one needs to give it to me. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
like that idea.
And questioning, on all sides of the spectrum, right? Like that's the thing too. Money healing, healing your finances, is not just about getting more money, right? Because it's like healing your finances is also for people who have money and have privilege and have generational wealth, right? Like there's other money wounds that's like questioning, questioning the family patterns, right? Like questioning what you've been taught, about like sense of like righteousness or like secrecy or
Mm.
manipulation using money or entitlement to like pass on wealth between generations or just like things like that, right? So it's like I like the idea of just questioning and just being like, okay, well, what if something else was true? Yeah, like what if like this isn't all of what is? And yeah, I always love that questioning energy. My kid is a Sagittarius and he's 12, and he was just sort of saying on our a long car ride we were on, he was like, because sometimes I'll say something and he'll question it, and then I'm like, it's kind of rude, like, or devaluing or, like undermining or whatever, how you're questioning it right now. And he's kind of like, yes, but anything anyone says is like always this question of like, but what if that's not true, And I was like, that we were just like, that's the Sagittarian way, but also often it's rude. Don't say it out loud, just like, but I like, I think it's a good instinct, right? Like, what if that wasn't true, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a Sagittarius rising, so that makes sense.
Okay, you get it.
I'm like, this is a thing. Okay.
I know. I'm like raising a Sagittarius. I'm like, a lot of my job is just being like, that is something you shouldn't have said out loud. It's fine to think that.
Yeah. Yeah. First, we read the room, then we decide.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah. I feel like I was always very inquisitive. Like I wouldn't say it out loud, but I would just be like, why do people do this? Like this just seems harder. I do it to my
Yeah.
boyfriend. I'll say it out loud to him.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. So now I want to know like the witch part. Like how do we start incorporating like maybe in our witchcraft practice, like
Mhm.
money, anything around money? I'm curious.
I'm like, I would have to say that I'm more of like an altar based
Mm.
practitioner than a like ritual based practitioner, although I do engage in a lot of ritual in different ways. I feel like a lot of my ritual practice lives more in my Judaism,
Mm.
and my kind of like witchcraft lives in like an altar based work, um, and that kind of like temple priestess energy. Um, so I feel like making a little money altar is like a great way to start, or just like carving out a little bit of space on your altar that's like, okay, this is the money altar corner.
Mm.
And I think that altars are like incredibly powerful for multiple reasons, but they serve as a reminder of internal like healing work that we're doing, like our intention, our focus, our desires. So making that external reflection is very important. And I think also like humans really seek that mirroring experience, right? We want like what's happening inside of us to be reflected externally. And so I think the altar can also serve as that kind of like nourishing energy. So it's also going to like nourish your relationship with money. And then, then you can do the manifesting work or the ancestral piece, or just sort of like see what arises in that space.
Hmm. So for like if somebody's like, okay, I want to create like a money altar or a space
Mm-hmm.
in my altar, what would you recommend for like what they should put on it or thing, like different things like that? I know people always have
Mm-hmm.
questions. I've gotten that too. It's like, what's the right thing? I know there is no right thing, but
Totally. Yeah.
yeah.
But if you wanted a little startup guidance, like again, just like you're saying, there's no right, Amanda's got it right. Like there's no right way or place or, way to be, things to put. But if you wanted to get started, I would say like put down a cloth or a tray that feels like rich to you, so maybe it's like gold or purple or red, or even has like a money print on it, or like rhinestones or whatever it is. And then actual cash. I'm a big fan of like actual cash. It could be, or coins, it could be ones that feel like special to you or that you've like, stashed away, collected over the years, or money that comes from, countries that you have connections with, emotionally or ancestrally. It could have um, like any kind of crystal or plant friend that is like an ally to you that feels, like a part of your healing process, like citrine, pyrite, those are kind of the different stones do different things, right? Green calcite. Um, there's so many. Even thinking about, like, for example, the protection stones, right? Like putting like obsidian if you're looking for kind of like protection and grounding in your relationship with money,
Mm.
or putting black tourmaline if you're looking to really try to remove some of other people, or even like through the lens of like systemic other people's like
Mm.
imposition in your financial life. So those are a few ideas.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know if you've ever done this, but like a lot of the time when I do the work with my clients, I have them like visualize like aspects of like their being. So like if they don't feel confident, I'll help them visualize what does your confidence look like if it's like a human or something.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've done that before for money, and it was really
Mm,
eye-opening because you've been talking about like the relationship to money, and I haven't really thought about it like how can I be more intimate, like actually, and maybe for some people like treating it like a person, like what
yeah.
is money to me? Yeah, when I first did it, I saw it as this like really like greedy, like grimy man. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, this is very revealing for how I feel about money. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done anything like that, like if you have like any like rituals, because I know you say you mostly do rituals like in your more personal stuff, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. No, I haven't done that. It makes me want to do that, actually. There's a couple, I think one of the book, there's a book called Make Money Your Honey. I think the author is like Amanda Abel, but there's some other person too that has like something like that, right? Like that kind of like, oh, date, like romance money, like go on a date with money, kind of as a, like a personified being. And it makes me very curious about it as well. Um, my little rituals with money, well, I think a great quick and dirty like money uh ritual as in terms of like manifestation is always the kind of like write yourself a check from the universe,
Mm.
so it's like, oh, like, okay, I need to, whatever, if it's a long-term goal, like this is how much I ultimately want to be making per year, or like this is how much I want to have in retirement savings when I retire, or even like this is how much I need by the end of the month to like pay this bill, right? And then you like write a check out like from the universe, to from the
Mm.
bank of abundance to the bank of the universe, like to me. And you don't even have to put a number. You can also just write paid in full, like to me and my like abundance paid in full from, the infinite source of the universe.
I like that. Yeah, I think that that's also like I like that a lot of the stuff that you are talking about and are giving is like it's a tangible thing for me to do, because I think for money, especially because well, sometimes money is tangible like as cash, but like the idea of money is like intangible for a lot of people, or like financial abundance.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that you're giving a lot of like grounded, like I can see the altar, I can see the check, like I'm writing down notes about my behaviors, like I'm looking at my actual bank account. Like I think that I don't know, it just feels very like structured.
I think for people who are very in touch with like the spiritual dimension, especially, there is often a lot of ease in just like not fully being incarnated, right? Like
Mm.
fully human in this life, like right now doing things. And so it's helpful for
Mm.
us to do things that are just like, no, human life, this human life, not like I'm in a whatever, like I'm in the stars, I am in the cosmos, I'm in the past life, I'm in the future, I'm on a different timeline, I'm like, talking to angels, like, yes, all of that, but also just like, yes, your human life, I think, is your top
Mm,
spiritual assignment in this moment. So I'm just like, yeah, like get, little things that are just about like human life, material objects, like that's the earth journey.
mm. So I just want to ask you, like, if there's anything that you wanted to share, like, if there's like my number one thing that I like telling people or something, like, because I know your book is coming out too. So maybe there's like
Yeah.
stuff you want to talk about in that.
Yeah, well, let's see. Um, I guess my number one thing is just like, don't ignore money,
Mm,
no matter where you're positioned in it, like, don't ignore it. It is harmful, right? Like you're hurting
mm,
yourself, and everything that you want is going to intersect with money because it's going to intersect with like material resources at some point, you know? I think I would say that especially sort of to like younger people because it's easy, there's for a lot of people, there is like a lot of ignoring
mm,
money, in your 20s, right? Because it's like, well, maybe you don't have dependents at that time, or, you're not like, I'm going to buy a house right now, or, whatever it is, right? And, but I'm just like, yeah, just don't, like, it is important, I promise, and it, all the kind of like neuroses that build up around money are not self-loving, so it's like, just, air it out early, like don't box it up, and it's never too late, but just, I guess that'll be my thing, air it out. open, open up the money box and air it out. And I do have a book coming out, which I think the book will be out by the time
okay.
this episode comes out. It's launching March 1st from Chronicle Books in San Francisco, and um, it's called Money Magic: Practical Wisdom and Empowering Rituals to Heal Your Finances. And it's a 7-step system to healing your finances, right? To kind of like, okay, if I want to go through a process of sort of trying to explore my financial life, trying to build that self awareness, work towards goals, really identify what my goals are, like what do I need to do to get there? What tools could I give myself? It's a whole system that you can work through. And it's also gorgeous. The artwork is done by Broops, who's just like an incredible queer artist in San Francisco also. And, I was truly honored that they did the book artwork because I just love it so much.
Yeah, I was like looking at the like advanced copy that you sent me, and I like that like the background is like indicative of like Louis Vuitton pattern, but with like
Mm-hmm.
symbols. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and okay, so one other question that I did want to ask. We talk about like ancestral healing. So do you have like any advice or any like stuff that we can do to maybe start like if we realize like well, I know for my I'll choose my example like my personal like my my grandma was like very motivated by money. That was like the only way she like found security and like but that's not something that like maybe I'm not intimately aware or understanding like maybe how that fully affects me, but I still want to like heal that in my line. You don't have to use
Mm-hmm.
my exact example. I just wanted to use that to ask
Mm-hmm.
the question. But like, how would people approach like ancestral healing?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a massive,
Yeah.
question in a way, and different lineages have different approaches, and I always encourage people to try to access like resources and a system that works within your lineage because because it's the right one for
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, so I feel like noticing the way that it shows up
Mm,
in you, right? So like noticing when that voice shows up.
mm,
I think trying to identify whether the voice that shows up is an internalized version of your grandmother's
mm,
story, like something that you have like inherited kind of like, epigenetically, or just like,
mm,
the story has become also your story, or if it's really like her voice, kind of
mm.
like an externalized, like unhealed kind of spirit energy, um and but really like asking the ancestor, asking the spirit, asking even the feeling what it needs, like what do you need, what are you afraid of, what is the fear, like what is the upset, and then starting to try to make some offerings towards providing that unmet need, kind of like whether that is, you know, could be manifesting in like the way that you treat your finances, like the way you treat your finances could be an offering. Um, Maybe it's like an inner child wound, or it comes from a place of displacement trauma, or um, like uh, hunger or poverty, so it's like, okay, what kind of offerings can you give, whether that's like a physical material offering on like an ancestor altar, or it's a behavioral offering. I think there and additional things are options.
I like that. Yeah, I feel like one thing that you said that really stuck out to me is like understanding if maybe the root isn't really tied to money, that it could be, like you said, out of like a poverty or like some other like mistreatment or something, that happened in our life. And that can be for our personal lives too, right? Like our money story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that that's just really something important to point out. Like, sometimes the heal could be from an inner child thing. And if we acknowledge that piece of our inner child, then it will help and alleviate like how it's the behavior is like showing up in our lives in our money story or in the
Mm-hmm.
way we handle our finances. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's really I don't know. I feel like sometimes people try and separate out everything. So
Yeah, nothing is separate. Plus, it's Pisces season. Nothing is separate. Everything is everything.
yeah, cool. Okay. So I'm like really excited. I think the podcast episode will actually come out maybe like a few days before you. Yeah, it'll come out on the 25th. So it'll
Cool.
be like a good like couple of days, like listen to sneak peek of what's in my book. And
Right.
but yeah, I'm just like, I want to say like personally, like maybe the reason why I see you as a celebrity is like you're one of the people that's out here saying like it's okay to look at money, it's okay to look at your finances, because there is a lot, like at least in the US, like culturally, like don't talk about money. That's something you don't even talk about like in public, or don't say how much you paid for something and all these things. So like I think it's great that you're just out here being like, let's always, like, money is okay to talk about. We're breaking down stigmas and myths and things like that. Um, so maybe like in my perspective with my money issues, I'm like, oh, you're a celebrity. That's really cool.
Well, thank you. I'll take it.
But yeah, I just wanted to say like thank you for coming on. And I feel like the way that you talk about money and break it down makes it feel like very like simple and attainable. So I think that that's really needed for people who are approaching like really intense, maybe overwhelming stuff.
Yeah, overwhelm. Overwhelm's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I'm excited for your book to come out and to read your book. um,
Thank you.
yeah. And then if you have any like last minute like thing you want to say, or if you just want to share like where people can find you, where they can like book with you and stuff, I'll put the links and everything in the show notes, but always good to say it too.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me on today. It was really fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. And if people want to see more of my work, you can find my website at moneywitch.com. New and impending design coming. On Instagram is a great place to find me. That's my main social at money.witch. I have a YouTube channel which will be getting a fresh drop of a bunch of new gorgeously produced videos soon. I'm on Twitter at, I think it's money_witch. And I think that's it. But yeah, you can get on a wait list for my coaching, and I send out a notification when we have sessions open up. Oh, I have a newsletter every 2 weeks that I do. You can find that off my Instagram or off my website as well.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. And until next time, everyone, bye. Thank you for listening to Witchy and Weird Pod. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, follow us on the socials under Witchy and Weird Pod. And if you want to stay in contact with our host, Amanda, follow them on IG under Amanda Sakertop Intuitive and Twitter and TikTok under Amanda Sakertop. And if you love Witchy and Weird Pod and want to support all that we do, become a patron and get access to exclusive benefits like discounts on merch, bonus content, and woo-woo experiences. As usual, everything is linked in the show notes. Bye!